Good morning, everybody. So, I'm making this video at 1 a.m. I'm on the brink of sleep, but I wanted to just make this video, try to do it as quickly as possible and also as coherent as possible. I'm gonna try to not say like as much. Um, but yes, I finished this book about 3 days ago, I think, and it was an okay book, and I know for a fact I'm gonna forget most of it, so I'm gonna try and make the review now. And I have a few notes in my little note app, because honestly, this book didn't stick with me. It's a cool book, but it's very general. See, the story is one of those things where there is a main storyline, but it's not very focused on the main storyline. You get to see about small parts about of each character, and because of that, it draws focus out of the main storyline, and so you are also kind of the attention you give to the characters who eventually still make it to the end. It's not as strong as it could have been, and that's a problem that happens with other books I've read as well. I think the other one was The Silent History. Same shtick. There was a general story, but because there was a lot of characters, it's hard to keep track. And that's the same thing that happens here. Now, the difference between The Silent History and this book is that it's not straight up. Each chapter is a different person's POV. It's more of there's one chapter and within it, some paragraphs are talking about this person, some paragraphs are talking about another person, but generally it's all in third person, except for the last chapter. For some reason, it's written straight up in first person, like I did this, I felt this. Very odd, but last chapter anyways. It's the epilogue, so I guess it doesn't really have to follow the rules of the story. Uh, yeah. Overall, I think 6 out of 10, very average. But average like okay, not average like 5 out of 10. I think I give it 6 because I'm going to give it the benefit of doubt, a bit extra benefit, because this is a translated book and I think the translation is a bit choppy, so that's not the fault of the writers. I think it's just the fault of the translator. To talk more about that, see, the other two books that I've read which were translated was another Korean book. Oh, by the way, this is a Korean book. Beast of Little Land by Juhea Kim. Another Korean book which I also reviewed quite recently. It was what, The Stalkers or something like that. And the other one was Murakami. And okay, Murakami and the Stalkers, they write in a very uh, literature. I'm not sure if this is how they wrote it in the original language, but when it was translated, it was very literature vibes, where the words they use and the sentence structure they have is very roundabout, and it kind of uh, says more than it's supposed to. Murakami more than the other one, obviously, because Murakami's a freaking like old guy. But still, that's the general vibe of it. And even those small texts like at the back, which are like, oh, this is so good, this blend of horror and mystery or whatever. In The Stalkers, it says something along the lines of very Murakami-esque. And yeah, this one, on the other hand, it's not, but I don't know if it's in a good way or not. The writing and the translation, I feel like you don't have to make it oriental, or you don't have to make it seem like another language, but when translated, the English word seems kind of not childish, but the dialogue specifically doesn't seem very formal. Not formal, but not very serious. Not very serious. It gives off, I feel the dialogue give off kind of AOP writing or bad writing dialogue, and I get that most of the book is novels, but I think the first book was written, the dialogue was from 13-year-olds and something like that, and you can give that excuse that it's 13-year-olds talking about. I don't know, it's alright. Something's alright. It gave very, I won't say average, it doesn't but I just understand the average. It gives me that vibe, where sentences and words they use, not great. It's so just what it is, and it doesn't really tell. There's no implications. You don't get this feeling of, oh, this writer describes it very well. It's more of this writer describes it as what it is. The curtains are blue, but straight up as the curtains are blue, and not like it when I was expecting the curtain was blue because he was sad. It's one of those things. Um, and that happened for most of the story, most of the descriptions as well. It was very straightforward, which is not a bad thing, but I don't know. I don't know. I would have expected more because the premise of the story is cool, or it's at least interesting. This story is set, let me tell you, this story is set in colonial Korea where the Japanese are still occupying it. And you know, the Japanese, and it's awful. And it goes through this whole time period from 1917 or something until the end after the Korean Revolution in 19, if I can get the timing, 1964. So it's a whole era, whole generation, and we follow this kid or a few kids from when they were young up till they're old. So it's that thing. And like I said, this story isn't, there was a story, but it also, because it was set in the whole, that whole period, the writer made it so you get to experience a bunch of point of views to get a wider understanding, or you get to enjoy a wider vision of colonial Korea. But in the end, this is a fiction book, so keep that in mind. It's not real, but you know, the imperialism is. So that's that. Um, let's move on to the actual story. I think there's a lot of, yeah, it's on me. There's a lot of characters, and it was all right. There's a lot of characters, but I don't think it was too many for me to keep track of. It's just kind of I did not care for a lot of them. Let me try to tell you the main characters. Is the main character is Jade, which was this courtesan, which something or something. Her love interest is Jung-ho, and those two. Oh, Jade is the main protagonist, basically. Even though whatever, Jade is the main protagonist, she even gets the first-person point of view at the epilogue. And then some other characters, we got Jung-ho, which is a her love interest, and also like a beggar who eventually turned communist and then got killed in the end. Sorry, spoilers. We got Myung-bo and Sung-soo, which are, one of them is a hard communist, the other one's a hard capitalist. But they're both kind of related to Jade in the way that Jade's aunt, the one that took her in to become a courtesan, knew them. And then we had the Japanese generals, Ito and Yamada. Was that a Japanese accent? I don't know. We had those generals, and then we also had Jade's second love interest. Um, where is he? Jade's second interest, Han Chol. We had that one, and also lastly Jade's sister, or like stepsister, or whatever, cousin, Luna and Lotus. Let me set the scene. It was in 1916 or something, and then Ito and Yamada was out in the snowy mountains of Korea, and they were hunting because I don't know, they were hunting and also out on patrol when they see this almost dead Korean guy on the floor, this very old, almost dead Korean guy on the floor. One of them was like, let's just kill him, he's freaking Korean. And because, you know, the Japanese are being Japanese, so they're like, let's kill him. Except one of them was like, oh God, one of them said something along the lines of, he's old, he's gonna die, let's just save him. And they saved him, and it was a good thing because afterwards a tiger attacked them, but then the old Korean guy saved them because he, I don't know, lives in the mountains and knows tiger things. Keep that in mind, this old guy's important somehow. But that's the first introduction we get of Ito Yamada, and we don't hear about them until halfway through the book. To scene shift to Lotus, Jade, Luna, and Danny, and also Silver, which are just the courtesans. You just have to keep in mind that Danny took in Jade, so now Danny has Luna, Lotus, and Jade under her, and they're basically training to be courtesans because, you know, Jade is poor and it gets you money, it gets your family money. Time skip to then when Yamada came in, and Japanese being Japanese, freaking Yamada Ito, I think Yamada. Yamada came in and Luna. and then Luna became pregnant. Uh, when keep in mind she's like what 15, so Japanese being Japanese people. And then that was a big like obviously. Then we get to see throughout this, there's also points where we get to shift the perspective to Jung Ho, where he was just a freaking beggar, and then he came to Seoul, and then he fell in love with Jade when he saw her during one of her outings. As courtesans do, they just walk around, and there was like a parade or something, and Jung Ho saw her, and then he immediately fell in love with her. And his whole character arc is that he wants to be rich and successful to be worthy of someone like her. That's his whole character arc. Somewhere along the line came, not somewhere along the line, but eventually Myungbo, the freaking communist, he was trying to recruit more people for Korean independence, and he recruited Jung Ho and his little gangster gang. Um, Let me try to see what else happened there. Luna left to the US. She found a lover. Lotus also found a lover, but then that there's like time skip to when they were like way older, like 20, 20, mid 20 or late 20. Luna left to the US. Lotus found Lotus she wasn't in love, but she got together with a mayor or someone in higher power, but then she never got a son, and so the mayor kind of like threw her away. Rude, but rich people. And then she got addicted to opium, and then we never see her for like the last part of the book. She didn't die. We see her at the end, but I'm just saying she was like missing for a part. And then Jung Ho wanted became a communist, and so he did communist things. And once Korea gained independence, he got sent to jail for being a commie. Who else? Hanchol. Hanchol was the love interest, like I said, the third love interest of Jade, and he was a rickshaw driver. First, he was poor, but then someone noticed his skills. Some rich guy, I think freaking Sung Soo or something. And then he got education, and then he forgot all about Jade, basically. No, no, he didn't forget, but he shifted his priorities, and then stopped loving Jade. And now he's successful. Yeah, Jade was a courtesan, uh, and then in the end, everyone left her for their own reasons, you know. And then she moved to Jeju-do Island, is that what it's called, to live a happy life in the prologue. Some other people, the other two people, the other freaking people I'm going to talk about in my actual thoughts. Okay, starting with the fact that remember how I said Luna got sent to the US? Not got sent, but she found a lover and they moved to the US. This was so whatever. She got sent to the US before the Korean Revolution happened, before they fought and gained independence. And once that happened, this was in the end of the book, somewhere near the end, where it was the falling action close to the conclusion. Luna sent a letter back to Korea to Jade and Lotus, being like, "Hey guys, oh my God, I'm sorry I didn't contact you for so long. I don't know how to do it. You guys were at war, and I feel so bad being in the U.S. while you guys are fighting and you guys are risking your lives." Which is like, oh my God, come on, try a bit harder. But within the letter, it said, "Oh, because I'm starting a family here, I have one free green card I can give out to whoever wants." And then between the two of them, Lotus and Jade, it's so chill, it's so convenient that one of them wants it and the other one doesn't. Guess who didn't want it? It's Jade. Jade didn't want it straight up, but Lotus is so like so presumptuous. When the story talked about the letter, and right after the letter ended, it was straight up Lotus saying, uh, "It's gonna be me. I'm gonna go to the US because my life has been so hard." Not great. How can you, as basically a sister to Jade, say right in front of her that you're gonna take the ticket without even uh, thinking about her feelings. So yeah, and then Jade was so conveniently said, "Oh, I think I'm just gonna stay in Korea. Um, yeah, and I don't want to go to the U.S." So that's a thing which I think it's so whatever. Another one is Ito and Yamada. Like I said, they're both freaking Japanese generals who are the worst of the worst, but they both got weird redemption arcs. Not exactly redemption arc, but they suddenly had more humanity at the end. Just at the end, which to me just sounds like the writer wanting to give them to flesh it out a bit, flesh their characters out a bit more, but it's kind of tacked on and it's what's the point? You're already like at the end of the book, you're at page 350. There's no point talking about how, oh, Ito's come from Nagasaki and wants to like stay with his family. I don't need to know that. Just keep it as a weird pedo, which he still is, by the way. I don't know if that is it was implied. Um, So at this point in the story, James is and throughout the story, she's younger Ito with or at least less when they do, you know, she's or in Yara, wherever she's before Ito with and Ito got her, you know, very lives. But then now when she is well in her 40s or when she's old, basically, Ito doesn't want anymore. And it was very implied. That's just because he's older, or he's like, that's how I was say, you know, James was like, the scene was after they fought. Yeah, like I said, it's weird that I now know where he lives. The other person, Yamada, like I said, a weird bit of humanity that's just sprinkled in. This was the scene where in the midst of war, uh, Japan or the Japanese army running low on fighters is trying to increase their numbers. And to do that, they're taking prisoners, Korean prisoners. I say prisoners, but you know, we all know they're all innocent. Japan at that time just freaking like criminalized everyone on the streets. So they're all innocent, basically. But they take these Korean prisoners, ask them to strip, and also tell them to go fight for Japan. One of the one of the people in that group was Jung Ho, and Jung Ho being Jung Ho, he's like rebellious and everything, and he doesn't want to do what the officer tells him to, and so he rebels, and the officer hits him on the head and pushes him down, and through that ruckus, this little trinket falls out of his pocket. This trinket being a cigarette case that his dad gave him, who, shocker, shocker, not that big of a shocker. But shocker, shocker, his dad is the same old Korean guy who almost died in the mountain who saved Yamada and Ito like 30 years ago. And that trinket, that cigarette case, was given actually by Yamada to the old guy as a sign of respect and as a sign of a get out of jail free card, where he's saying, "Oh, next time if you ever if you get in any trouble, um, or maybe not getting in any trouble, but if you see me again and you need a favor, just show this to me and I'll remember that you've done this for me and I'll free you." So Jung Ho now has that because his dad died long ago, and Yamada sees it and he's like, "Oh my God, you're the kid of the guy who saved me. Let me save you from this prison escapade." But just keep in mind, it's like if I was the guy right next to Jung Ho, who still has to go fight for Japan apparently, or else I'm gonna get killed by the Koreans. Or else I'm gonna get killed by the Japanese. Is that I get killed by the U.S. or killed by the Japanese at that point? And I see Jung Ho right next to me, and he gets a get out of jail free card just for being, I don't know, the son of some guy. I'm just as innocent as him. Why does he get a get out of free jail card? And then, in the point of view of the reader, am I supposed to look at Yamada and be like, oh, he's now a good guy because he saved Jung Ho? I don't see that because he's still as evil as ever. He just has a weird bias. So, yeah, that's Yamada. Yamada dies at the end. Do I remember how he died? I forgot how he died, but I remember it was what is it called? Not a mirror, but I guess yeah, it mirrors the death of the old Korean guy, and I guess you can imply and see the deeper meaning of that. I'm not that into the story to know, but yeah, just know that he died the same way as the Korean guy in the snow, with no one around him. Next is Hanchol and Jade and Jungho. Like I said, the love triangle that isn't really a love triangle. So Hanchol, old beggar guy, and Jade, they both actually started with loving each other, and I was like, okay, sure, whatever. But then in the middle, which I think is such like a move by Hanchol, is that he just fell out of love without saying anything. And if I was Jade, I would feel used. Because that's basically what it is. Jade paid for his tuition, by the way, because he's poor. She paid for his tuition. Um, and so when he went to college and he got a new job offer, he just changed priorities completely. And suddenly his priority is back to his family, even though at the start he talked about how it was either implied or he said that he didn't like the expectations of that. He comes from this old-timey prestigious lineage, except he's not like directly linked. It's like a cousin thing, so he's technically part of it, but he's quite far down in the family tree. And so his mom, he's the only son. His mom isn't that close to the other relatives, so they don't really care about his family specifically. So even though they're poor, they didn't get any help from the rest of the family. But now that he's educated, I guess he gets this feeling of, oh, I need to do my family proud, even though I don't know, they did nothing for you, and you never had that thought in the first place. You only had it, it only affected you now when you like have a better education and you have more opportunities, but you forgot literally Jade who gave you those opportunities. Whatever, he fell out of love. And Jade is still into him. Unfortunate, but whatever. Remember Jung-ho, the guy who is trying to get rich for Jade, he eventually, even though becomes a communist, he is doing quite well for himself. He goes to Jade and then Jade basically tells him, basically friend zones him and he gets hurt really badly. And so they don't get together. Which is a sucky move by Jade, by the way, because Jung-ho is literally like the best. Or I guess, okay, not the best, but he's like the best option. I don't know. I don't know. Um, in the end, like I said, Jung-ho, there was this point, this conversation where Jade kind of felt regret for not choosing him. So I guess that's your what's it called? Not resolution, your conclusion to that, and hopefully you feel better afterwards after that conversation. Um, yeah, but Jungho still dies in the end, so that's that. Let me see. Oh yeah, Jungho had a wife at the end of the story. Just telling you guys, he had a wife and kids, but when he was in his prison cell, he started fantasizing about Jade and the life that he could have had, which I think it's so messed up because he has a wife and kid, but at the brink of death, he's still thinking about his past. So kind of, that's a douche move. You don't do that. You don't do that. And I think that's all the notes I have for this book. So that's Beast of Little Land. The beast being the Japanese. Beast of Little Land, the Japanese people in the little land of Korea. Um, and yeah, I think that is it for the book review.